That's James's meal behind all the steam. Most of the steam's coming from my soup. I'm going to be talking about Anne with an E, and this is season 2. And this is where I've started in the story. I could have gotten the whole series out from the library, but I decided to start with here. And I had always loved Anne of Green Gables when I was young. And I had a friend who, she said that I looked just like an actress who played Anne of Green Gables in a series of TV movies that were being made at the time. And I was thrilled because I thought she was beautiful. And I don't know if my friend actually meant it as a compliment. As well, you know how kids are. So, anyway, I was looking forward to watching this show. And, you know, in a way, I was a bit hesitant to watch it because I thought, oh, I'm going to be reminded of the place where I want to be, and here I am, right, or whatever. But I saw the scenery, and I looked up, and I'm like, yeah, that's where I want to be. It's beautiful. That's perfect. But here I am. And I just put my nose into writing some poetry, and here I am. So every day you just keep going. Now, I was a little bit
CBC, eh?
I know, CBC.
Now this is a recent thing. This isn't the one that was put out in the 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm.
But I think whoever was working at the CBC, I don't know if there should be laws about rewriting fiction or whatever. I don't know how, like I was saying to James, I don't know if Lucy Maud Montgomery is really considered Canadian literature or whatever.
No, it's literature. It's maybe not classic.
But honestly,
you should have to say adapted or something like that.
Well, they gave it a different title. They called it Anne with an E. And it's a series.
At the end, eh? Wow.
What?
Anne with an E?
Yeah. So that's what they've titled this series. Instead
Anne
of
with an E. There
Anne
we go.
of Green Gables, Anne of da-da-da-da-da, right? So they're not it's not titled after the books, and maybe that's why they've gotten away with it. I hope they had to pay the family of Lucy Maud Montgomery a hefty fortune to do this to her work.
I think you lose the rights to, in the United States, I don't know what it is in Canada, I think it's similar in Canada, 75 years after you die, so who knows, I guess you can do pretty well anything after that. You don't have to pay them money, so on and so forth.
But they have, what is it? They have rock music for the theme song.
Brilliant.
And they're trying to suggest that Lucy Maud Montgomery was ahead by a century. What we're thinking is really profound. But this is not the work of Lucy Maud Montgomery when you watch the show. It has a lot of things that you wouldn't have. Like Gilbert was away working in the tropics and stuff. Like, and he met up with a man from Trinidad or something. And like, anyway.
So, and they get it on together? Is that what's going on?
No, nothing like that.
A little different? Okay.
What? Anyway, so there were a lot of African Canadian, I guess, people in this series. So it's making out like back in that time there were a lot, like in 1880s there were
1890s they claim.
Whatever.
On the back. Late 1890s.
Whatever.
Okay. So over 100 years ago.
Yeah. There were a lot of African people in PEI, which I don't believe there were any. There certainly weren't any there when I went to school back in the 80s. So maybe they all just scurried away into some other place. I don't know. But I mean, maybe the people who wanted to push this through with the CBC, they were like, okay, well, we need some sort of maritime story to put a lot of African people in because they were in Nova Scotia. Well,
I don't think there were very many there. You know, like I think it's around Shelburne, a few to the east of Halifax, maybe Cole Harbour or something like that. Very, very few. Go on, sorry.
So that was Nova Scotia, and this was PEI. There was no bridge to PEI. You had to take a ship, and nobody would go there unless they had business there or whatever.
Well, there wouldn't have been much business there.
There wouldn't have been business there.
It was mainly agricultural, I get the impression.
Yeah, but anyway.
There used to be railroads there. I don't think they have railroads there now. They got rid of them.
No, they got rid of them.
They made some into the
yeah, they have
the right of way, the Trans-Canada Trail.
That were railroad, but now they're not. But they had a scene where there's a woman playing classical piano, and in the audience they focus in on a woman with brown skin who is all dressed to the nines with her big feather hat and everything, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's not even remotely believable. You're gonna have to work harder to sit. I mean, maybe you've already stretched the story so far out of where it originated. Maybe have Anne move to Nova Scotia, to where the African people were, so that you can have African people in
I don't
the
think
story.
they'd be hanging around in semi-high society listening to classical music.
No.
But,
and they also, in that little scene, they had one of Anne's friends is an artist, who he's a young boy who he likes to draw, and people are all down on that or whatever, I don't know. And then he ends up talking to a drag queen, all done up, and
this is in Prince Edward Island?
In Prince Edward Island. So, I don't know. I mean, when I was little and we'd moved from the farm in the Peace Country here, we moved to PEI, and when we went to Charlottetown, it was like, wow, we moved to a house that was on the beach, and it was a historical house, and it was so beautiful, and I thought we were in a mansion, because to me it was, because here we were from a farm where at the beginning we didn't have a bathtub and stuff like that. So, wow, this was a mansion, and it had rats, but I didn't mind, I thought that was great. They were like cats.
This was like Belfast, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to mention Belfast.
And then we went to, my parents would take us, they had money from selling the farm, not nearly enough to be just living from, from the savings or from the earnings or whatever, right? But they'd take us to the theater in Charlottetown, and wow, it felt like we were just in some big city and everything. But it wasn't. It was not a big city. It was just glamorous to me because I was a girl from the farm, and I got to see Raffi, which was awesome because I loved Raffi. My favorite song was Baby Beluga. What's going on in there? Anyway, so it turned out, after watching Anne of Green Gables, I wasn't all, I long to be there and not here and whatever. I was just thinking, how could they have done this to this story, which I don't know. had that great a story to begin with, but it's just ridiculous. When you do things like this, you're going to have some people upset. Some people who actually maybe did like the story originally and are going, "Well, yeah, this isn't it."
I think some people might find it triggering.
Yeah.
What's happening is there's a lot of racism going, and then there's reactive racism happening on the side of the people that are styled right wing. It's funny because you got nifty lefties. They're not really left wingers. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in meritocracy. They don't believe in equal opportunity. They believe in equal outcomes. They don't believe in free speech. On and on it goes. And they've been doing this.
I don't know. I think they just like to twist the knife.
Well, son?
They're just they don't believe in equal outcome or anything like that. They just want to see how far they can push it before they can start a fight.
There's a lot of that.
They're not on the side of the
no.
people that they're claiming to help. They're not at all.
They're using them as foot soldiers.
Exactly.
People of color, as they style them, so that they can get into power. And they'll be pushing those folks around. Just the way Stalin was supposed to be the person responsible for ethnic groups in the Soviet Union before he came to power. Look what he did to them when he got into power. Ethnically cleansed the Chechens off to, I believe it wasn't so much Siberia, but the wastelands, kind of like a cooler desert. I wouldn't call it cold. In Soviet Central Asia and stuff like that. They're supposed to be so sensitive to nationalities, as they call them, and they were anything but. That's with the little freakazoids who are in control of so much of universities and stuff like that. Some worse than others. Concordia is awful. It should be called Discordia. York University is awful too. But the humanities, and in particular the so-called social sciences, they're really antisocial pseudoscientists in the grasping little hands of these nifty lefties. So, topical. I was talking, was it yesterday, about Nala Ayed having a show on. She does the big idea. What's the big idea show? She calls it Ideas, but it's really what's the big idea on CBC. They play it twice a day. Once during the daytime or evening, I guess, and then one set overnight. During the weekdays, I think. I don't know. A couple of days back, it was about stories in movies. Historical. They did stories. And then they have a separate show on movies, like Hollywood history and stuff like that. And they were complaining about, they always go back to D.W. Griffiths. A long time ago, it's over 100 years ago, you a-holes. Sorry. But, sorry for working blue there. So, they were complaining about how Hollywood had made up history, and I'm going, what is this? It's not exactly history, but people get a skewed idea of what it was like in the 1890s. Now, if you want to employ people of color in equal opportunity roles and stuff like that, have some shows on, it doesn't have to be Canadian, whatever, like Trinidad, whatever, have some shows and employ some people of color in roles like that. But I don't think if you actually looked at CBC, I don't think you'd see like 4% of the people employed by them being black. What's happening, or African American or whatever, what's happening is they're favoring certain people over, I say, white heterosexual males and stuff like that. They're underrepresented. on the CBC. I don't pay the CBC to be racist and genderist and sexist like that. I really don't.
But honestly, I was thinking about the story. You know, this did get me thinking about Anne of Green Gables and how she had red hair. And I had a friend in PEI who, you know, she wasn't a close friend. I didn't have any close friends there. But there were a few people who were nice to me. I mean, we lived on a farm. We didn't get out much, so I only knew people from school, really. But some people even came to the farm where we lived near the beach to visit, so that was nice. And I was invited to this one girl's birthday party, and she had red hair. So that's the friend that I'm talking about. And I thought that was pretty special. I hadn't run across very many people with red hair, and it turns out that red hair is the rarest hair color on the planet for humans. So I think that somebody could tell a story from Anne of Green Gables where they kind of mirrored to, you know how in Genius they were mirroring Albert Einstein and his wife with Curry's. Well, you could do a sort of Anne story. Because here she's adopted and she has red hair. And I don't know if Lucy Maud Montgomery intended this or not. But I remember my dad thought his neighbors, that he bought a house in PEI. He thought his neighbors were kind of racist or something because he had mentioned that he wanted to rent out the house while he wasn't there, and his neighbors said, well, don't rent out to people from Newfoundland because they'll just trash the place. They don't care about anything and they won't pay you your rent and this and that and whatever. And because people, you may look at some people and they have the same skin color and you think, oh, okay, well, they're from the same culture. No, they are not. And so you have these islands in the Maritimes that they're very different people. And so even the people of, I guess, Cape Breton are considered like a very different culture from the people in other parts of Nova Scotia. And but you don't know that by just looking at people. You don't know that by skin color. But then when you get to know people, you think, oh wow, yeah, your culture is very different, and they don't necessarily get along. So I'm watching this and I'm looking at all the mixture of different, just outwardly, like the skin colors, just the outside, not even the cultures that they're, you know, the differences of it, and it's so ridiculous. But it gets me thinking about, well, they could actually tell an Anne story. It could be that, I don't know if Lucy Maud Montgomery intended this, but she has red hair, and it could be that she's from an Irish background and adopted into a Protestant family that's a Scottish background or something. And that might have been what she was trying to just hint at a little bit of bringing together cultures or something. But so you could play on that, but you'd have to do some research to figure out that people actually come from different cultures, and it really doesn't matter what color they are on the outside. They are different people on the inside. And so you'd have to employ some people with CBC that weren't racist, so that they could actually see further than a person's skin color in order to come up with a storyline that actually has a point, a good point, that could be could make society better rather than tear it apart into 1,000 pieces. So
Yeah, that tearing apart is called playing identity politics.
yeah, it's
and
ridiculous.
I don't like it on the right or the left.
Anyway,
So
what did you have?
How much time?
Oh, you have 10 minutes. Do you have 10 minutes worth of stuff to talk about?
I might.
Okay.
Look at this.
Oh.
Agatha Christie.
Mhm.
So I don't have all the books that I've read by Agatha Christie. 18. A major league achievement. 18 Agatha Christie novels. It took me 5 years to read them. I guess I'm a slower reader. But then look what the titles are. Oh, Agatha Christie translated into Dutch. 18 of them. 4 of them I've gone through twice. And 3 of them. And 3 of them I've read accompanied with the English version. So, Train 1650 is a 4:50 from Paddington. Really, train at 4:50. They're using 24-hour clock in the Dutch. I think that'd be something like 16, something like that in the Dutch. I'm not very good at my active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary is getting pretty good. So this is the kind of like the secret kind of secret-like Mr. Quinn, really the original, and what it means in Dutch is mysterious. Mr. Quinn. And I'll show you what I've done with about 600 pages, equivalent of almost 3 of the novels in the Dutch. This is what I'm ultimately going to do if I live long enough. My brain lasts well. So I've started doing this one, but understand, I've done this for 600 pages. Takes me about 25 minutes per page. This one a little less because it's a shorter page. Go through every word that isn't a proper noun, or borrowed from English, or from, borrowed from English or is the same as in English. In other words, stuff from Latin and stuff like that. I go through and write out. So in some cases, abbreviated form. And I put pressure on myself. In other words, I'm trying to speed up. So I actually keep track of the times it takes to go through. How often do I go through this? Each time. Each one of these pages, read once. Then I go through, and as many words as I can, I put in what they are. I put in the Greek delta for the, so on and so forth. So I abbreviate some of the things. And because the important thing is not writing this stuff out, but actually doing the recognition. Handdoeken, that's a German Handtuch, and something like that, and it means handkerchief, something like that. And so I go through once. Then I go through the second time, I'm writing this stuff up. Third time, I correct what I've done by finding the parallel passage. Hoofdstuk, headpiece, that's chapter. And the root for chapter actually would be, like in German, it's Kapitel, taken from the Latin. It means a head. It's derived from head. There we go. I got to go through. So I put Mevrouw, or Mevrouw, that's Mrs., so Mrs. McGillicuddy. Zwegda, over the, so she, Zwegda, I'm not sure exactly, by the way, I think that'd be Swade. It's not in the original. Heichend is panting or huffing or something like that. More it'd be cognate, I think, with huffing. Over the perron, which would be overhead perron. Perron is would be taken from the French. It means platform, so on and so forth. So Mrs. McGully panted along the platform in the wake of the porter. Kielzog is would be wake. right there. So that's the third time. Got to go through and correct. Now, when I run across something that I don't get right the first time, or I can't figure out, then I'll kind of circle it or underline it, and I've got to go. So I've got to figure out. So snirpten, I wasn't sure what it meant. Flutjes snirpten, and it meant whistles. So it's related to the English flute, and it means kind of like piped or something like that. Yeah. So that's the third time. Fourth time I go through. So that's the third time in the Dutch, and I have to go through every word here in the English the third time. Then the fourth time I go through, and hopefully I'll go a little bit faster. So here, the first time through, when I just went through it and reading it, 250. Second time, 244. So 4 times, and it's there's no soften or anything like that, or fooling myself. Oh, I know that. No, I got to prove it. So that's why it's taken me 5 years to get this far. If I live long enough, I'll go through every one of those 18 books. 25 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes per page. What will that be like? Well, already now, for each one of the equivalent of 3 books that I've gone through like that, each one of those books is 1 course. More than 1 course. 90 hours. 90 hours. Just going through the series of books that I've got, the 18 in Dutch. I'm not fast. Taking about 2.5 minutes per page. Those 18 books, they're the equivalent for me. I wish I could go faster, but it's part of the learning process. It's the equivalent of more than 2 courses. So all told, the equivalent of 5 courses. That's like 450 hours, or thereabouts. Probably more, really. 450 hours for the 18 books and to the various levels that I've done them. I'm doing a similar thing with Latin, the Vulgata. Similar thing with history of the Ukraine. Translated into Ukrainian from English, done by a professor, hopefully still alive, Subtelny or Subtelny. He used to be at York University, hopefully he still is. And on it goes, the unbearable likeness of being in the original. The Book of Mormon in Spanish. More Agatha Christie, the Murder of Roger Ackroyd in Spanish. Murder on the Orient Express in Spanish. The Body in the Library in Spanish. On and on it goes. This sort of process. You know, there's more than one person out there who'll be going around saying, who's this James? Who's this James to be talking about these things? This is who this James is.